Right now, I'm excited to get to the BetQL guest line. Welcome in our friend, Mr. Pat Leonard. Covers the New York Giants. Does a great job. Give him a follow at P. Leonard, NYDN. That is New York Daily News. Pat, what's up, dude? You finally catch up on some sleep after the draft?
What's up, JP? What's up, BMitch?
What's up, Pat?
Yeah, gonna hit the links tomorrow. So the true start of the offseason.
Attaboy. BMitch might be taking our producer Jeff to play golf today, who's probably one of the worst golfers on the planet. So that'll be interesting.
He's gonna be in the car.
I'm not gonna judge. We all have blow up holes. You know this.
Every hole is a blow up hole for Jeff.
He's a good vibes guy, though. Good vibes.
Good vibes,
dude. So let's start. I want to check in on the whole NFC East. We're starting with the Giants. How real was this offer to move up and get Drake Maye with the Patriots?
Oh, it was very real. I mean, it's what they wanted to happen. And, the funny part, JP, is that even though the Giants ended up offering, this year's one, next year's one, this year's two, trying to get up there were plenty of people, I'm sure, that you were talking to as well, who ultimately just didn't think the Patriots were going to move. And the Giants knew that was a possibility as well. So they were prepared for it, even though they weren't thrilled about it. But they were trying to go get Drake Maye. The one unknown was how they would react at the quarterback position if that didn't come to pass. So the fascinating part about it is that it was him and only him. And really, to me, it was Caleb Williams. He was never going to pass the Bears at one, but the Giants would have loved to have Caleb Williams or Drake Maye. But after that, the idea that they didn't take a quarterback at all, really a fascinating deal.
Well, what does that do to Daniel?
Yeah. Daniel Jones
to Daniel Jones. What that does to Daniel Jones?
I love it. Poor Malik Nabers rolled in tired and fatigued off his draft night, and he screwed that one up. Where this leaves Daniel is as still the starter. I mean, I had sources tell me the same thing that John Schneider, the Seahawks GM, said on the radio a couple months ago about Drew Lock, which is that he signed in New York in part because they told him he would have a chance to compete to play. And so I do think that Daniel's still the guy because of all the money they have invested in him. But his legs are a big part of his game, and he's coming off that torn ACL in his right knee. He's got the 2 neck injuries. He's already on the field, throwing the football around in the spring program. But Locke's going to get a lot of snaps in the spring. I think ultimately what this means is Daniel starts the season as the starter, but has a shorter leash. And, you have to think that unless he has a crazy good year this year, that he won't be on the Giants in 2025.
See, the way I look at this is if he has anything in him that's exceptional, this is when you get it. See, most people be saying, oh, man, they mess with his mindset, his psyche. I could give a damn about his psyche. If he's a quarterback and he's supposed to be mentally tough, this is when you stand up. If you have it. If you don't have it, hey, I understand.
I agree. And I think, an interesting part of the Malik Nabers pick in that regard is Joe Shane's key component of this offseason. This is the exchange of the offense centered around a running back to an offense centered around a wide receiver. And we all know that in the modern NFL, having that star wide receiver typically ends up the more preferable and now traditional way of being a more explosive offense. And so that's kind of the gamble that Joe Shane is making here with Malik Nabers in and Saquon out. And then to your point, BMitch, it's kind of like for Daniel Jones, he's had an argument in some of these other years that he didn't have enough this or that on the line or weapons.
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally think their line is quote unquote fixed, but you do at least have a certifiable number one wide receiver where it's like, go out and show us, kid, once and for all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't been loaded at receiver, to say the least, and Nabers seems like that dude. One thing I find interesting that I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, so forgive me, but it was somebody talking about LSU and talking about the difference between like Marvin Harrison and Malik Nabers, and just that Nabers has more of that. Like, if he's not getting the ball, if he doesn't feel like he's being put in a position to help his team how he wants to, like, he's going to bark at the quarterback, at the OC, all of those things. Did he give any indication of that? Have you heard that? And maybe I'm crazy, but I foreshadow Malik Nabers shouting on the sideline of the Meadowlands because Daniel Jones misses him on a slant like time and time again.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody in the league about this yesterday, and I was saying, if Daniel Jones can't get Malik Nabers the ball, Nabers being upset will be there. They'll have a lot more problems than that.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, you are correct. I think like the Cardinals in the end, a lot of people believe they were going to take Harrison because they viewed him as kind of like the clean prospect, their next Larry Fitzgerald for the next decade type player compared to Nabers, who he's only 20 years old. And so maturity for any 20-year-old is going to be something they're going to have to learn on the job. He's coming here into New York. I heard things about Malik. I mean, he had an arrest for a charge. He had an unlicensed weapon in his pocket on Bourbon Street. But the interesting thing I heard closer to the draft was that he was a bit of a malcontent at the combine, and that he was kind of walking around like basically like, if Harrison's not doing it, I'm not doing it. And he did not. Right. At BMitch, how about this? He refused to be measured at the combine, which, I've talked to some people, like they say, yeah, guys don't run 40s, guys don't do this and that, but he wouldn't even let them measure him, which I know some people in the league said, like, they don't even remember a top prospect refusing to have like their height and weight and arms and that kind of deal. But, I think really his production is gonna matter one way or another. It's all gonna be, like, to your point, JP. I mean, the Giants averaged 15 points a game last year.
Yeah.
If you guys remember the 2016 team where the Giants made the playoffs with Eli and Odell Beckham Jr., Odell was a great player then, but he was their only offensive weapon. And so they had to have an elite defense, and then Odell would get shot out of a cannon every now and then, and they would win games like 17-13, 10-6. I personally think that's the way they're going to have to win this year. I'm not sure the defense is going to be that, but certainly to your point, it kind of all hinges on properly deploying Malik Nabers.
I think ultimately, if you look at it, whether the guy is Marvin Harrison, Malik Nabers, or whoever, if they're producing, nobody says anything.
Yeah.
If Marvin Harrison doesn't produce and he's quiet, he's going to become a problem. I listen, man. Every receiver I know that was damn good, they either was completely outlandish or completely quiet, and people couldn't understand him. Art Monk, who was unbelievable, the people that covered him wouldn't vote for him to go to Hall of Fame because they say he never talked to him. He was just a quiet man. So if someone finds negative in anything that you do, but if you produce, nobody cares about it.
Today is also,
right.
Speaking of receivers, I saw on the internet, today is Gary Clark's birthday.
Yes.
Happy birthday to
Now,
Gary Clark.
Gary Clark is exactly what y'all say Malik Nabers is. You didn't throw him the football. He let everybody know about it.
Sure. I mean,
Coach Gibbs and everybody else.
Anybody that has the audacity to throw some curse words at Coach Gibbs needs the football. Right.
He got my newfound respect that day. I'm like, damn, that dude crazy.
Saquon is gone. Who's the Giants' back? Like, what's the running back situation?
Yeah, so it's Devin Singletary coming over from the Houston Texans.
Okay.
So Brian Daboll coached him with the Buffalo Bills, and that was the offensive work that Daboll used to get the Giants head coaching job. The funny thing about that, JP, is I chuckle. I talk to people about that, and I say, you guys do remember that when Daboll was the Bills OC and Singletary was his running back, he never ran the ball.
Right.
Like that was when he was throwing every play. It was a running joke around the league how little they ran it. But Singletary's a good complementary 3-down back. He can do a little bit of everything. You don't have to take him off the field. But ideally you're working with him as a complement to someone, and it's not just him carrying the load. They drafted Tyrone Tracy out of Purdue late in the draft. He is a converted wide receiver, a returner, but a guy who, as a running back, flashed last year. And it's just kind of a jumble of him, Eric Gray, a former late-round pick out of Oklahoma, Gary Brightwell's still there. But, JP, frankly, this is going to be an offense that is going to have to rely on the pass. Mm-hmm. And so Tracy and Singletary both are pass-catching backs who I think factor into that.
What is the? I haven't looked. What is the Giants?
Who's the quarterback gonna be throwing them passes to him yet? Still, we got
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones ain't doing it.
Well, to your point, real quick, Daniel does not. He hasn't ever really thrown screen passes terribly well. Like so that's not exactly a thing that they've done.
I mean, that's tough. That's tough. No wonder they like Drake Maye. Apparently, he can't throw him either. But I haven't looked at this. What's the Giants' win total for like the Vegas win total for this season? Jeff, try to find that.
I think it's around 6.5. Am I right about that?
I know that's where the Skins are. I was curious.
Around 6.5. Now that's in the neighborhood of not good.
Well, that's where Washington is.
Yeah.
But Washington also loses to New York every year, so who the hell knows? But Daboll's in his second season. There was so much excitement.
6.5.
6.5. Okay. There was so much excitement because the first year he comes in, really seems to make it work with Danny Dimes. He uses his legs a lot more. What is the seat like for Daboll going into this season, and maybe even Joe Shane, I guess?
Oh, it's hot. I mean, definitely for the head coach, possibly for the GM too, depending on like if things go off the rails this year, if the roster is again a clear reason why, versus like, hey, some players look good, but the game management is terrible, so that could go different ways. I mean, last year, the way it ended, the way it went, the amount of infighting on the staff, the amount of coaches who wanted to get out of here on their own accord without even getting fired, led by Martindale. The fact that they had to give promotions to guys on the offensive staff, including Mike Kafka, to prevent him from leaving for a lateral move to Seattle. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why Brian Daboll needs to put it all together right now. Scoring points is the number one deal, though. I mean, you can mother F your coaches a little bit more when you're the head coach and they ask you for an answer and you have it. But if you're going to be cursing people out on the sidelines and then you don't have a better way of doing things and you're not scoring points as an offensive coach, there's just not many places to go. But it really is in the context of Daniel Jones. This is what is just the most interesting part of them is they took this job with eyes wide open that Daniel Jones was probably not going to be long for them and they were going to end up taking their own QB.
Mm-hmm.
And they're now in a position where they're tied to Daniel. And I think if you gave them truth serum, they never would have seen this coming. You know what's really interesting? The game in Washington where Tommy DeVito was starting and the Giants were turning the ball over from Washington left and right, but Washington was still looking like they were going to come back and take the game. And then I think it was Chris Rodriguez Jr. fumbled in the third quarter.
Yep.
And man, I'm telling you, that fumble cost the Giants a quarterback. that fumble, that win, like they were really headed, off the deep end with a rebuilding team to a top 3 pick. And it's so interesting that stretch, including that game in Washington, is really what has Joe Shane and Brian Daboll now on the hot seat. And also in the context of the draft, JP and BMitch, it explains the pivot from we're trying to go get Drake Maye, but once we can't, if you look at the Giants draft, they ended up drafting for need, bang, 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 all the way through the 6th round. In fact, some of the players, even if they're players that other people liked, people felt like either they were slight overdrafts or they were just, hey, might have been better to address another position here, but based on need, the Giants took the player they needed at safety, corner, tight end, whatever it was.